Thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast. I'm Matthew Chiwada, and I'm joined with
Kib Harris,
Emma Worrell,
Natalie Faulkner.
And today I'm going to be covering mental illness, mental health, depression among teens, symptoms, and different treatment plans that are offered to those in crisis. So let's go ahead and just start off with the fact that, we all kind of struggle with mental illness, right?
Yeah.
So true.
A little bit. When was the first experience that you had that kind of, allowed you to realize you're struggling with your mental health compared to others?
For me, I guess, what made me start going to therapy was when I realized that I was trans, and then I went to my therapist, and she was like, "Oh, girl, you have a lot more problems than just being trans." And I was like, "Oh, so true."
I don't know, I feel like for pretty much all of my life, I remember being generally sad because I have a family history of depression. But I don't know, I think what really, solidified it for me was in middle school. I was just, so deeply insecure and so sad all the time, and my parents were like, this isn't normal, so...
For me, it was kind of just, it took me so long to realize it, and by the time I did realize it, it was a little too late, because it wasn't until, late in middle school when I was already very far down a very stupid path, and it wasn't really until, my friends kind of told me, hey, that's not normal. And I was just like, okay, I'll go to therapy.
For sure. You never realize that it's not normal until your friends are like, dude, what the hell?
Yeah, so my first experience was when I moved to Tennessee. I lived in Indianapolis for about 15 years, and after moving, I kind of realized, wow, this really had a big impact on my life. I know I didn't really have that recognition at first, but over the years, I've definitely realized how that's accumulated over time, and I've avoided a lot of emotional battles, and starting therapy has really helped me get over those struggles. So, that's the first step, is getting help from other people or starting therapy. So, as, I've mentioned, a couple of you guys have mentioned you've started therapy. How's that been going for you? If you start therapy, or if you went to a treatment center, if you want to discuss that.
I don't know. Therapy is just a long, boring process full of repetitive stuff, and, I know I need to do it, but I just... it's a lot of effort, but it's good for you. It definitely, makes you feel better after you do your therapy.
I personally have, a semi-longer history with therapy. I did have 2 pretty bad therapists when I was first searching for one. And I ended up going to Crestone, which is an inpatient center, for a week when it got really bad. And I don't know, I feel like that definitely helped me, learn better coping mechanisms for my mental health. And now I have a new therapist, and I love her. I feel so good after sessions just being able to, talk through my problems.
So I've had one therapist, and it wasn't great. I went to 4 sessions with her, and I would open up about my mom and the problems I have with my parents, and then she would just kind of tell me if you know anything about me, you know I'm not a religious person. I very much no thanks, but immediately she was just like, have you considered turning to God?
I had a therapist that did that. It was awful.
Yeah, and of course, depression and anxiety is more prevalent among teens these days. A lot of people try to relate that to technology or whatnot. But, some facts about that is, every 100 minutes, a teen takes their own life. And suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for young people from ages 15 to 24. And, only 30% of depressed teens are actually being treated for it. So taking the first step is definitely the hardest part of getting help when you're mentally ill, or even recognizing that you're struggling with something and not just ignoring it. So, for me, I've started therapy pretty recently after things kind of got to a boiling point. And I originally was planning to go to an inpatient center for a little while, and therapy actually was able to help me. And at first I didn't think that my therapist was going to be a good fit, but over time I realized that once I was a little more honest and a little more open, changing where I was doing my therapy sessions, actually reaching out for help, that really benefited my experience for me, especially being gay, and all of us here are in the
Yeah.
LGBT community in some form or way. It's really, the fear of not being ourselves in public definitely has a toll on our mental health. So, I mean, would you like to talk about that?
Being part of the LGBT community is like it's really amazing, unique thing that's like supportive and like helps you. But you also have to go through like the crushing fear of like your family turning their back on them, and I think that's why all of us like aren't religious too, because like that's another like motivating factor for like why our families like might abandon us. I don't know. I think like our friend group is very supportive, and I think that's a positive for being homosexual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Kib said. Like, I always have felt super supported by my friends, and I don't really experience a large brunt of, like, targeted for, like, my sexuality because I am bisexual, but I'm, like, straight passing, I would say. But with the whole being non-binary thing, I am, like, worried that people do judge me for using they, them pronouns.
For sure. Pronouns are super scary because you can't hide that you're using, like, they, them pronouns.
Yeah.
And, like, there's, like, as a trans person, like, trying to, like, present a cis, it's horrifying because there's no way to, like, hide that without, like, it affecting you mentally, you know?
Yeah, and it's like I can either come out to people and like I may have them like be super accepting and use my pronouns that I prefer, or they could like completely like abandon me and be like, oh, I don't want to be around you because you're not like the accepted norm or whatever. Or I could just stay in the closet and deal with people continuously using the wrong pronouns, which also sucks. So it's just kind of scary no matter what.
I only recently started using like she they pronouns, but like already kind of the backlash has been so different from when I came out as gay, because like I came out as gay to my parents right as I was like kind of figuring myself out and breaking up with my ex and stuff, and they were just kind of like, yeah, we know, like this is not news.
Been new.
It's like, this is not news to us. Like, we kind of figured. So, like, that wasn't the problem. But when I started kind of using the new pronouns and, like, being referred to as they by my friends, like, my parents would pick up on it and they'd be like, hey, what's going on? And so I opened up to my mom about it, and she was, like, understanding to a point. And then, like, we talked to my uncles who were also gay, and they were like, I don't know, if you want to be a they, then, like, go for it. And I was like, that's so dehumanizing. And it's like, that's going to be the reaction of all of my family, except the rest of my family who's already homophobic are just going to be like, no.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've broken a lot of ground on the, like, sexuality front, and I think, like, the gender front is, we have a
lot way to go.
A long way to go.
Yeah.
Because even, like, my own mother, who's supportive of, like, everything LGBT, is like, I don't believe that you're a man. And I'm like, well, that's just you're gonna have to somehow wrap your head
That's
around
a you
that
problem,
one.
yeah, Steve.
So I don't face, as much discrimination as a lot of other people in the community face or fear. I was in the closet until I was 15 or so. So once I moved here to Tennessee, I eventually came out because the stress was too much, and it's definitely benefited me. My parents are very supportive. I couldn't imagine having to go through all the struggles that trans, non-binary, gender fluid, all those types of people go through, because that's a lot of, extra stress, and, I already struggle with some things, and so I understand, how that can be a lot. And it definitely takes a toll on your mental health, worrying about not being able to be yourself, and not being able just to go out, people to accept you for who you are. You're always scared of someone trying to change you, or to, maybe, like, scare you, hurt you. It's always, you never know what's going to happen. So that's for sure why mental health struggles are very prevalent in the LGBTQ community. Along with mental health, there are a lot of, depression signs that people feel, and depression shows itself in physical symptoms and in your head, and it depends on really, who you are as a person, and it can vary from person to person. And there's a lot of, different symptoms that occur, and a lot of them are actually hidden, and you might not even know. So things like changes in sleep habit, your appetite, weight changes, alcohol or drug use, fatigue, forced happiness, or you're less optimistic. It really can vary, like, person to person. So I know I really struggle with I have a pit in my stomach when I start to get anxious or nervous, and so I know it really can depend on, everyone individually. So I guess we'll talk about, what symptoms did you notice or experience when you're struggling mentally?
I don't know, like, I definitely struggle a lot with insomnia. I think it's tied both to, like, my depression and anxiety. I just, like, I can't really fall asleep at night, and a lot of times it is my anxiety, like, mulling over every possible thing that could be going wrong at any moment. And I definitely, like, am the same as Matthew, as, like, I have a pit in my stomach, like, all the time from my anxiety. Depression symptoms, it's just, like, so hard to get out of bed. Like, every day I just want to, like, lay in my bed. I can barely, like, motivate myself to roll over, open my laptop, and do my Teams calls. It's so hard to do all my homework. Like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people don't really get, like, how hard it is to be stuck in a depressive episode, because, like, I feel awful that I can't get all my work done, but I just physically cannot, like, it feels like there's a brick wall blocking me from everything in my brain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this year has been especially difficult with the whole school thing, because it's like, normally, like, I'm an A and B student with, like, perfect grades and, like, great teacher relationships and stuff, but this year it's like I'm barely passing most of my classes, and, like, it's just, especially while I was fully virtual, it was almost impossible for me to do work. For me, like, the symptoms that I kind of got were like Emma said, like, insomnia. It's real bad. But then, like, I would also get moments where I would really, really want to hang out with my friends, and I'd really miss them, and I would really want to be with them. And then just, like, it would be almost like I don't feel like I deserve to hang out with them, so I would just kind of stay at home.
So true.
And I would just kind of, like, I would be like, oh, yeah, no, like, I can't come out tonight. Sorry. Like, I don't feel good or whatever.
I'm the same way, dude. My brain will, like, convince me that all of my friends hate me. Like, if their text tone changes slightly, I'm like, oh my god, they hate me. Like, they think I'm annoying. And then, like, I don't know, I hang out with them and I'm like, why did I think they hate me? Like, everything is fine. But I just get stuck in this, like, awful cycle where my brain convinces me of something.
Yeah.
Which is, like, deep down I know it's illogical, but, like, my anxiety is like, nope, they hate you.
I get so defensive. If I think someone hates me, I'm like, well, I hate you, so
Literally.
take that.
I definitely understand that, and I definitely struggle with a lot of similar things. I could sit here and go with them all. I'm not going to, but I definitely understand. I really can get in my head sometimes and really let my thoughts take over, and I've started to work on, separating my thoughts from me and, giving myself that freedom. So, with depression overall, it's estimated that 16.2 million adults in the United States, or 6.7% of American adults, have had at least one major depressive episode in a given year. The 6 types of depression that are most common in America are major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, bipolar, seasonal, postpartum, and psychotic. And, I know it depends person to person. I'm not going to self-diagnose myself, but it's good to be aware that everyone's struggle is very different, and one person's feeling might not be the same as one other person's feeling, even if, they have the same diagnosis or same symptoms, and you have to treat everyone as their own person. So, I'm glad that we were able to have this discussion about mental health and, how it's affected us and symptoms and stuff, and how it's affected us from being LGBT and things like that. So I'd like to thank you all for participating in this podcast for me. So thank you.
It was
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, and I think that concludes today's episode.